Paul Alexander barely clears the threshold of the Tubman Chavez Community Center before a uniformed officer greets him.
How you doing? What's your name?
Paul.
Paul, Dave Mealy.
With his storefront a couple miles away, Alexander is used to seeing cops. A recent spate of shootings has ramped up police presence, and Encanto's reputation as a gang neighborhood means a lot of red and blue lights to begin with. This year, the San Diego Police Department held its annual open house in Encanto, specifically to address concerns about racial profiling. Training staff wanted to share publicly for the first time their non-biased policing curriculum, and they wanted to have the kind of face-to-face interaction Alexander experienced at the front door.
The key here is creating dialogue, creating conversations, keeping the community concerns at the forefront.
Sergeant David Bautista teaches the non-biased policing class. The state requires it every 5 years, but San Diego's officers get some form of it every 2. Bautista says the idea is to get officers to recognize that they're predisposed to associate race and criminality. Discussions, mock scenarios, and a series of videos are supposed to tease out that bias.
Another belief you may have is that racial profiling is racism. It is not. It is the use of race as a predictor of criminality.
But Saturday's demonstration veered into a slightly different direction for Alexander. He's speaking a few days later.
I was under the impression that we were going to see how they teach their recruits, and instead what I saw was a conversation where they were explaining why they do the things they do and why the community has a misperception of racial profiling.
Alexander points to the section on what are called pretext stops. Those are when police lawfully pull over an individual for a small infraction like rolling through a stop sign, but are really investigating a larger offense. Bautista uses the example of a suspected drug house where cars are coming in and out all night.
So I have Jim and Sam. They're sitting in a police car at the next stop sign.
In this scenario, Jim and Sam are looking for people to break the law at that stop sign so they can pull them over and potentially find drugs that confirm their drug house theory. But that can look kind of bad to outsiders.
You notice this police activity, so you watch for a bit, and it's under a well-lit area, and you recognize that most of the drivers appear to be of a particular race. So does that give clarity what a pretext stop is first off? And how pretext stops could appear to be racial profiling.
Training Captain Brian Ahern says sharing that kind of insight with community members should temper the assumption that they're being targeted because of their skin color.
The more that we can bring the community's perspective into the classroom, the more the officers can factor that in terms of, for example, explaining to the person stopped the reasons why they were stopped.
The state thinks it's a sound strategy, too. It calls it procedural justice and plans to unveil curriculum on it in the fall. But Alexander says many in the community are already turned off. For the past year, they've heard police and city leaders repeatedly say they believe the perception of racial profiling is real, but not necessarily the act.
When you have the community that's saying there's a problem, and before you address the problem or admitting there's a problem, you say, well, actually, you're just misperceiving what the problem is, that starts off on the wrong foot. So you're already starting off by denying the validity of what I'm saying. So why should I listen to that?
The department's efforts to connect with the community on this issue closely follow what national experts recommend. And San Diego Police Chief Shelley Zimmerman says new recruits will even take a month to visit churches and mosques in the Black community. But Alexander says until the department gives a little on its stance that racial profiling isn't happening, its message will be lost. A rough analysis of the department's data suggests people of color are subject to more stops and searches than other groups. An academic study on what that means is due out this fall. Megan Burks, KPBS News.